Good morning, everyone. Dr. Christine Smith here. I have a wonderful guest for you today, Chef James Berry. I'm going to go ahead and invite him on now while I tell you about him. So, James was a private chef for to multiple different celebrities, and that includes people like Tom Cruise, George Clooney. Hi, James. Perfect.
Hello.
Excellent. I was just telling everybody kind of about how you had worked in the past, where you were a private chef for 16
Yeah.
years. You had done everything from cooking like vegan meals, then moved more into like the carnivore meal realm. And then I was about to say you've also started a functional food company called Eat Pluck. And that is basically different seasonings that have the benefits of organ meat. So I'd love if you tell everyone a little bit about yourself and just how you, like your journey and kind of how you ended up where you are.
Yeah, thank you. It's such a pleasure to talk to you. I love I just love our connection as well. I mean, we met like a year ago and
Yep.
gosh, you were in such a different place. I mean, we both were, right?
Yep.
And it's just the power of what can change in a year, right? Even a COVID year, right?
Yes.
So all the power to you, and I'm just grateful to be talking with you. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's been quite the journey. As you mentioned, I started out focusing on vegan vegetarian cooking. It wasn't because I was a vegan and vegetarian. I was more looking for an advantage because I knew that there were tons of chefs out there, and I just wanted to have an edge. I wanted to be able to support people in ways that maybe other chefs couldn't. And I would say even more importantly than just the vegan vegetarian thing, that I was really training to look at food differently, to really think about it from like how do I make it as absorbable as possible? How do I make health, how we define health? Everyone defines health differently. And at the time, we have to remember how far we've come in such a short amount of time. Because I've been cooking now for about 17 years professionally. And when I entered the marketplace, healthy cooking was grilled chicken breasts, steamed vegetables, and like no sauces, no fat. That was the epitome. That is how people define health. So we have to, that wasn't that long ago. That
Yep.
was like early 2000s. So it's really important. I was laughing because today I was at the grocery store getting a few groceries, and they had um, ornaments for a Christmas tree, and they were showcasing like butter, avocado, and I was like, okay, that says a lot that now Christmas ornaments are showcasing fat, particularly in animal fat, or it doesn't matter, animal or vegetable, but the fact that it's showcasing a fat is amazing, right? Because that shows how far we've come. I mean, I don't know. I think you're younger than I am, but like I remember when Snackwell's Devil Food, I don't know, they were like cookie cakes came out. It was like in the 90s. And holy moly, we all freaked out because everyone was like, fat free, you can eat as many as you want.
Yeah.
And now we're all suffering for it, right?
Yeah, just a little bit.
But I quickly like really focused as a private chef. I just focused on just helping my clients. So I really kind of met them where they were and just tried to get them off, packaged foods, off eating at restaurants. Because I think it's easy to forget with food that, when you don't have control over the ingredients, you have to assume that they are not going to be healthy. Because if you're buying it from a restaurant, if you're buying it from a grocery store, everyone's got a bottom line. Everyone has got to meet their profit, make sure that they're profitable. And I guarantee if you're eating at a restaurant, they're not using the more expensive animal fats to cook their food. They're just
Or
not.
oils.
Yeah,
Or,
or oils. Yeah, they're
yeah.
just not. They're using cheap vegetable oils like canola or soy or safflower or sunflower. I mean, they're just rice bran. I mean, they're using all these cheap kind of oils, and
When I
it's
saw
just
something the other day that said, instead of asking why good food is so expensive, ask why bad food is so cheap.
yeah, oh, that's great. Yeah, it's so true. So true. So the only way to truly be healthy is to really focus on you having control over the ingredients. And I always tell people, like, when you're going to the grocery store, don't fall asleep at the cart. Like, really make sure to make sure that you're really, like, you have to remember the front of the packaging is still marketing. That is not regulated. The back of the packaging is. So you have to turn the package around. I mean, I can't even tell me how many products will say, like, made with olive oil or made with all natural ingredients, and then you turn to the back and it's like natural flavors. It's an olive oil and canola mix. It's like they just try to manipulate you with the marketing. So it's really important to not fall asleep. Read the labels, even consistently read them, because sometimes companies will be bought by bigger companies and they'll change the ingredients and then they won't announce it, of course, right?
Yep.
So you'll think it's your same old, product that you've always loved, and nope, that bigger company has changed it and is now putting in cheaper, lower grade ingredients. So you really have to be careful. And then I always say, like, choose foods that are ingredients that don't have ingredients.
Oh, I like that. That's excellent. Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yep. And I just saw someone said like the back is usually lying too. It's challenging because like as you were saying, the back of the label is regulated, but then there's like certain tricks that you can learn, like when they list the ingredients underneath at the bottom, the ingredients that are the most heavily present are usually listed first. So if like the first ingredient is gluten or something like that, then that means that that's going to contain a significant amount of it, versus if something is listed last or things like that. And I'm sure, James, you probably have other tricks like that. And that's what I like teaching people about on this channel, right? Is like the physiology of what's happening. So we can kind of dive into that in a few minutes, of like the physiology of fat and of organ meat and like the benefits of that, versus what we used to think, where we thought fat was the devil, and now we understand that actually it's like really important for brain development and things like that. And then just teaching people hacks and like, yeah, exactly like you're talking about, how to grocery shop, or ways that you can cook things at home that are healthy but are conducive to a busy lifestyle, those kinds of things.
Yeah, those are I really am about the practical. It's really about the how. I mean, that's even why. So, you mentioned I created a product for organ meats. That's why I created Pluck, because organ meats, hands down, are the most nutrient-dense food on the planet. We're not eating it. We're just not. I don't care how many people will tell you, they'll shout from the mountaintops. They'll say liver is the most nutrient-dense food. You should be eating it. And yet even the people that are in the field don't eat it. Like, how many of you out there are like me who have, beef heart, have beef liver, have the kidney, and it's just been in your freezer for a year because you have the best intentions
Yep.
and you bought it, but yet you're not making it because you're still just out of practice. It's not familiar. And when things are not in our everyday or are not familiar to us, we kind of put them on the back burner. We kind of, avoid them. And maybe it's not even conscious. Sometimes it's unconscious. So that's why I'm all about, like, how can I make you getting these healthy foods in your diet? How can I make it easy? And how can I make it taste delicious? Because if it's easy and delicious, you'll do it.
Yep.
And you'll do it, and you'll turn that kind of health principle into a lifestyle, because healthy and delicious is key. It's so key with food.
Yep. And the lifestyle component, that's like the biggest part of things. And so, the Pluck brand that he's talking about, it's essentially a seasoning made of organ meat, and I'll let him speak more to that and like all of the research that he put into it, because I know a lot of work went into that. But in
Yeah.
addition, like easy things that you can do. So I regularly make bone broth at home because I will use it as the base for soups, for stews, especially during autumn and winter. Like it's just great. You can use it as a coffee replacement in the morning, and then you're not like putting, I know, there's the fat of like putting different fats in your coffee and things like that. But sometimes I like to support my adrenals a little bit more without the caffeine. And you can still get all the healthy fats by doing something like bone broth. And then you get a bunch of minerals at the same time, which is something almost everybody is depleted in. And with that, I will use, so a lot of people make bone broth with only bone. I actually just buy an entire raw chicken and I put the entire chicken in the pot with all the organs too, the liver, the kidneys, the neck, like all of that. And I just let everything simmer into the bone broth so that it absorbs the nutrients out of it. And then it's like a liquefied nutrient if, eating organs is a new thing to you. But this is where things like Pluck come in, because if it's like a new concept to be doing that, that's a really easy way to do it. So yeah, I'd love if you'd tell us a little bit about all the research that you put into making that.
Yeah, well, first, since you brought up bone broth, are you familiar with the GAPS diet and Dr. Natasha? Yeah, so they're really keen on making sure that people understand the differences. So bone broth, as you mentioned, is with the bones, but I would argue with what you're making
I
when you
guess
would
it's more
use,
stock. Yeah.
well, it's meat stock.
Okay.
Yeah, and she talks about that a lot, and it's really key when it's a beautiful way to make the easiest. Like, so let's talk about stages, right? So bone broth can sometimes, what are the complaints people say? Oh, it's too fatty, it's just too strong, it makes me kind of gag when I go to drink it. So here's a gentler meat stock. That's an entry level to this way of eating, this way of thinking, is you basically take like a whole chicken and make sure that's a healthy,
Organic,
well,
free range.
heirloom, yeah, heirloom, organic, exactly, free range. Like, get a whole chicken. You can keep the gizzards, everything in there. Just pull them out of the bag, though, the plastic bag.
Yes. Oh, I made that mistake the first time. Don't cook your plastic bag. That's
Don't
what
cook
the
the
false
plastic
estimate is.
bag. And don't make the mistake and then go like, oh, it will be okay. Like, no, 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 no. That plastic is, if you heat that up, it's bad. It's leaching. So just throw it all out if you make that mistake.
Yes.
But open up the pouch, put it all in, and then you fill a pot. Just make sure it's filled with water and it's over the chicken. And then you only need to cook it for like 2 hours. It's like you don't even have to cook it for the whole 24 thing that the bone broth usually is done. You just cook it until the meat is cooked through, so till it's not pink anymore, basically. And then you just strain the broth. You have this beautiful, light, just flavorful broth that's really gentle. It's not too fatty. Gentle, gentle, so soothing. You can use it in everything to cook everything. You can even cook your vegetables in it. You can do anything you want, beverage to cooking stuff in it. And then what's beautiful is you still have the chicken. You
Yeah.
can then like fork off the chicken and you can then basically put it in your salad or just eat it on the side, whatever you want, or put it in the soup. And so it's kind of an all-in-one. You're making the chicken, you're making the broth all at the same time. There's zero waste because then after you have just the chicken carcass, take that, save it, and then when you have more chicken carcasses later, put them all and make now bone broth with them. You know what I mean? So
Yes.
there's you can truly use the entire bird, the entire process. You can use everything in it.
And that's what we used to do. Like, we used to not waste any of the animal. And I think that's actually like a really beautiful concept for the earth, and like being more connected to nature is like, and being more connected to your food, and like realizing like everything that it gives you and everything that it went into that creature that is now nourishing you. And I think that's the concept of why he developed something like pluck, or like why, like I love if you could talk about the shift in mindset that you had as you went from like cooking a lot of vegan meals and things like that, because I there's different food things that work for different people, and that is something that I emphasize all the time. Like, if you have found that veganism works really, really well for your body, great. Like, I'm glad, and I hope that you're doing it in a healthy way and not with a lot of processed things and genetically modified things. But there are a lot of benefits to animal products and some vitamins that you can really only get from animal products. And so it's just different for everybody. But the whole point of this conversation and the point of this channel is to educate you so that you know the right questions to ask, and so that you can explore and that you have knowledge and you feel empowered and educated. So I'd love if you could talk about just kind of, yeah, like what happened in your mindset as you went from one style of cooking to a very different style of cooking.
Yeah, well, it's fascinating. It's such a great question because I'm all about like listening to your body. I really am a big fan of intuitive eating, and I don't ever condemn anyone for trying something. Like, I tried veganism, I tried vegetarianism,
Me too.
and
My
yeah,
body
well, I
didn't
mean,
do, my diet
yeah,
didn't like it so much, but other people's did.
totally. Most people that are in the field that are now touting, an omnivore diet have tried veganism. Like, I was in a Weston A. Price conference once, many, many years ago, and there was someone that was talking about the China study and, basically tearing it apart and showing people how this is inaccurate. And before they started, though, they asked everyone in the room, and there were probably like 300 people. They said, how many of you have ever been vegan or vegetarian? And every single room, every single hand in the room, went up. So we all have our journey. I've been in the field for over 17 years. I have personally never seen it work for someone in the long run. personally, veganism. I know that there are those unicorns out there, but I've just personally never seen it. When I would work with dietitians or nutritionists or trainers with people that were vegan and vegetarian, they were all dealing with being overweight. And they didn't start out overweight. They got overweight being vegan or vegetarian because they were eating so many starches and carbs because they were always so hungry.
Yep.
So you really do. I'm always telling people, and this is really how I moved through my own diet stuff and my own beliefs in health, is I just followed what is working for me and what do I then translate to my clients and what do I see work for them. And honestly, in all this time, what I saw work the best was a higher protein diet. I still am a big advocate of vegetables. I do like vegetables, and I find just the fiber and whatnot is really good. I see people respond really well to them. And then good fat. I mean, that's kind of it. You know, I know you can throw in some resistant starches if you want, but I find that that's really where it distinguishes. Like some people really work well with resistant starch and others don't. But I don't find much variation on the fat, that the protein and some vegetables. I just don't. I see everyone benefiting from those. Now, if you're really compromised, then how you cook these things is really what happens, right? So like if your gut is really compromised and you're not pooping daily and or you're having diarrhea daily, then I would really start to play with those, you know, and start looking at like, okay, maybe you need to cook your vegetables, no raw vegetables. And then in that case, that's when you're then cooking them in that meat stock that we just talked about earlier. Maybe the protein, maybe either protein you're eating is too fatty, and that's causing the diarrhea, you know. So you could play with them from there, but I don't find, it's really, to me, it's like gut health, eating those real foods, and then of course sleep and exercise and some of the other basics. But if you dial those things in, it's like, what I'm always amazed at is that most people's norms, and I'm sure you talk about this a lot, but most people's norms are below standard. Yeah. So we've been living with our chronic disease for so long that we forget what it means or what it feels like to thrive, which is really the state we should always be in. Like our human body is amazing. And so technically it's like our body's designed to thrive all the time. So if we're not thriving, then that means we're doing something or we're coexisting with something that's hurting our body and making our body struggle. But even then our body adapts still, right? So our bodies are so phenomenal that they'll still adapt even in such chronic and you know, toxic environments. So I just kind of transitioned and followed that path with my clients. And then it brought me to, okay, well, what's the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet? What are they? You know, and everyone will throw stuff out. They'll say, oh, it's spinach, or they'll say it's blueberries, or they'll say it's salmon, or they'll say it's meat. But if you look, you just do a search, the food, and it's a complete list. If they list beef liver on there, beef liver blows everything out of the water. Everything. And it's not just a little bit higher in nutrients. It's like 7 times, 12 times. It's like serious business. It's like truly a Mother Nature's multivitamin. And what's amazing about the vitamins in organ meats is that it's like all beautifully, perfectly designed. So all the fat soluble vitamins are with the fat. Like it's all there for true absorbability. Like it's designed for you to absorb it. Not so with synthetic vitamins, you know, not so when you're taking individual vitamins. Sometimes you might take a fat soluble vitamin and then feel sick from it, but that's because you're not eating it, you know, you're not taking it with food. There's little distinctions like that will affect how it's absorbed. But organ meats, it's like it's all in one packaging. And so my whole thing was like, well, we're not eating them. And so how can I support people? Because that's really what I'm here to do. It's like I'm not the why person. You're the why person. You know, Christine, you're the person that's going to say, hey, this is why you should be doing it, and this is what you should be doing. I'm the how. I'm all about the how. I come in and I'm like, okay, so you were just told you can't eat, you know, lemons, you can't eat this, you can't eat that. Like, now what are we going to do? Okay, sumac. Sumac is a perfect example of like, you can't do lemons because you just did an MRT and it shows you that you're sensitive to that. Do sumac. Sumac is a natural seasoning and it has a natural lemoniness to it. and it will give that zing to your dishes that lemon juice give when you can't do lemon juice. So I'm like the person that comes in and helps you not feel deprived. And that's basically what I was doing with organ meats. I was like, hey, most nutrient-dense food, I'm going to make it easy. So I'm going to take the same ingredients that you're getting in the capsules. I'm using freeze-dried, powdered, 100% grass-fed organ meats. But I'm going to then solve the other hurdle, which is a lot of people don't like the way it tastes. So I'm going to then make it taste good. I added organic spices and herbs to it, and they're all dry, so it's just like any natural seasoning. And I made it taste good. So now what's awesome is it's nutritious. It tastes good. Oh, what's the next hurdle? Oh, well, we're not doing it often. We don't know how to cook it. We don't like. We have a hurdle over just doing it, just getting in the process of doing it. Well, I made it a seasoning because we already all season our food. So there's no new habit.
And
It's
seasoning is
just,
like the best way to make healthy food delicious and make you want to do it more. Because I think that's one of the things that people run into around like healthy food, right? So like, oh, like it just doesn't taste good. So like, let me just cover a few things on that here. So
yeah.
I want to go back to what he was saying around like we have existed in a chronic state for so long that we don't remember what it feels like to thrive. And so I think that this will happen with people when they're starting to shift into a healthier diet. So your body changes with you. And I think and like you can see this in people who like train for weightlifting, right? Or people who like were weightlifters and then they start running and their whole entire like body changes. Or all the like actors on TV where they'll like gain 20 pounds and then lose 40 pounds. Like your body's incredible. It changes with you. So do your taste buds. So if you've been eating like super high sugar or super high salt or like really like oddly processed flavored things, your taste buds are going to be more adapted to that, and healthy food is going to taste weird. Then when you start eating healthy food more, your taste buds are like, oh, okay. And they just change back to that. And then all the processed stuff is going to start to taste bizarre. So like I haven't drank soda and I can't even remember the last time I had soda. It's been years. If I drink soda, like it doesn't taste good to me anymore. And that is because I've spent so long away from it and my body can now sense all the weird chemicals in it. And there's this thing people run into where they're like, well, I'm getting healthier, but I feel like I'm actually getting more sensitive and it's kind of annoying. Well, yeah, it's because your body's not numb anymore. And so it's like, that's really kind of what's happening. And when we're talking about the why of doing all this, nutrient dense foods are really important. So like if I have a patient where, their gut is in such a bad place that they're not really absorbing foods or they're just really limited on the foods that they can eat, something like an organ meat seasoning would be a really simple way to start to get them some like actual nutrients and like that's how people get stuck in this cycle, right? It's like your body gets into a slightly unhealthy state and then your gut really struggles with absorption and then you're not getting enough nutrients and then you can't rebuild your gut and then it degrades more and then you're not getting it. And so it's like this cycle you get stuck in. So this would be a way to break the cycle. And so if someone's in like a really bad state or they can't eat anything, that's why I tell them to drink bone broth or stock or something like that, because then you're at least getting some nutrients. And then I'll have them, graduate into putting that bone broth or stock into like a butternut squash soup. Like squash is a really easy thing to get lots of good vitamins and things like that. And then, also eating seasonally, like our bodies aren't meant to eat the same thing all the time. And this goes into Eastern medicine concepts of like eating with the changes of the season. So when autumn comes around, you're eating more squash, you're eating more cooked things, you're eating warming things to counteract the cold. And then when summer comes around, you'll probably be able to handle raw vegetables better than you will be able to handle it in the middle of snow and winter. So it's just like these concepts of working with your body and letting it change with you, and knowing that when you're making some changes, you might run into some things that, feel strange at first, but then you adapt to it, just like starting to exercise again. It's just letting your body change with you and acknowledging that it does that. So then when you start adding these nutrient dense things in and you kind of break that cycle and your body's actually starting to get more nutrients and it starts to perform better. And I think this is why he was talking about focusing on these things so much. It's like, what is the most helpful thing and how can I make it the most accessible? So,
Well, and you're bringing up so many good points, and I want to add so just as you mentioned, like you haven't had soda in a long time. So most people are on the other side of it, where they've had soda so often that when they go to try to drink water, it tastes gross and plain.
yeah.
And so that it goes both ways, right? And for that, I'm always telling people, like, be patient with your body. Like, let it catch up. Don't think just because like, it's like when you're feeding a baby. You might feed a baby spinach one day and they love it. The very next day, you're like, okay, I'm going to give some more spinach. They loved it yesterday. Why wouldn't I? You go to feed it to them and now they don't like it. And so our inclination as adults a lot of time is like, oh, well, I guess we're done with that. Right? We're so like extreme. Like, oh, I just tried water and I just tasted so gross. So I'm just going to stick with my soda. You know what I mean? It's like, take a breath, you know, and just like chill out and just know like it's going to take a little bit of time. But here's what's exciting. It doesn't take that long. Like we used to do this sugar control detox that took 2 weeks, and it completely changed your palate. And it completely changed your body. You lost weight, and it was amazing. All we did was we pulled out anything that was sugar related, anything that converted into sugar quickly, like starches and grains. And it was amazing. Like people that would drink, let's say, 3 glasses of wine at the beginning of the process, after 2 weeks, they could barely finish 1 glass because it was so sweet. Because now they've recalibrated their taste buds, and now the things that used to not taste that sweet suddenly taste extremely sweet. And what's beautiful about that too is as you pull yourself continuing on this path of like pulling yourself away from these manufactured products, these extreme flavors, you then start to enjoy what nature is producing. Like when you move away from all these like extreme flavored sweets, like a berry suddenly tastes amazing. Like just a simple raspberry or a blackberry, it just tastes amazing.
It becomes dessert.
It becomes dessert, exactly. And what I love about the palate, and what I always encourage people, and this is one thing that Pluck actually really supports you with, is because organ meats have umami. So umami is what we call the 5th taste, right? So we have sweet, we have salty, we have sour, we have bitter. And you really want to try to get all 4 into your diet. What the problem is we're leaning towards this sweet and salty too much, right? So sour and bitter might be pickles or cultured products, things like that. But that 5th one is umami, and that was discovered, I think, in the late 80s, but it's basically from Japan, and it's best described as like savory. And a lot of things have umami in it, but organ meats have it to the nth degree. And so I just got feedback from a practitioner a few months ago, and this is a testimony of what Pluck or anything umami can do. But basically they told me that they were working with a client whose child was spectrum, and that child was eating very restricted foods, and all they did was they said start putting Pluck on everything that you give your child. And that's all they did. And most kids love Pluck. It just, we made it taste good. So it truly does make food taste better.
I can vouch. It tastes really good.
It's just a really great seasoning that you happen to be getting organ meats with. You know what I mean? It's just like that. And so that's what they did. And their daughter started asking for new foods. She actually started getting more adventurous because her palate was changing.
Wow.
And it's amazing. When you start to change the palate, your whole world can change. And also kind of piggybacking on what you said too is that nutrition, like you broke down like how the gut and the kind of the cycle of life happens inside your body. Well, I'll just add to that in that I truly believe that if we can support our bodies in getting more nutrition and getting our vitamins and minerals up, because so many of us are walking around depleted, but if we can get those up, that we then will start to feel better in our body. And when we feel better in our body, we're now treating other people better, because we really do. We're human, right? We treat people how we feel. That's how most of us are. And so if you're feeling better, if you're thriving in your body, then guess what you do? You start treating other people better. And suddenly we have a better world. Like suddenly we are nicer to each other. And suddenly the world changes. Like you can literally change the world by eating organ meats. That's kind of what I tell people.
Well, and I think that's why I'm in the profession I'm in, right? Like I am so convinced that the way to make a better world is to just help people learn how to better themselves for exactly what you just said. It's like when your body's working and your brain is working, like we're designed to be fairly content, happy creatures.
Yes,
But
yes.
when we're surrounded by like toxins and stress and all these things all the time, I talk a lot on this channel about what I call allostatic load. And allostatic load is like the overall stress load that is on your body. And with the world we live in, like a good portion of our allostatic load is a bunch of environmental toxins that we really don't have a lot of control over. So that just like automatically like puts us pretty high to our threshold, right? And this is why over the last couple decades, food has become such an important factor in health, is because our allostatic load has been going up as the environmental toxins go up. Our nutritional content has been going down since
Yep.
those toxins also go up, because they leach things like minerals from the soil. And then even if your vegetables grown organically, like the soil just doesn't have as many minerals as it used to in our grandparents' day. And then in
And they're tracking that too, by the way. They've been tracking it since the 60s, and there's proof that, I mean, our own government has proof that all produce is less nutrient dense than it was. Every decade it goes down considerably.
Yep, which is like a little bit scary when you think about it. And it's like,
Totally, totally.
I'll work with people with supplements and stuff, but I always prescribe lifestyle first, always. And most of the time, I can really help people with just making some lifestyle shifts. That's why like I do the group programs that I do, is because then it's like it's literally just educational. I'm just teaching you how to listen to your body, and I'm teaching you pretty much the things that I don't know, like why the healthcare profession doesn't teach people about like inflammation and like how it shows up in your body and what to listen to. And when you can start to spot those things, you're literally learning how to read your own allostatic load. So you might have a week where you're like, oh, like my skin is really off and I'm like kind of fatigued and I have some brain fog. Like maybe I, shouldn't eat extra sugar and grains this week. And so that's like the cycling that I'm talking about. Like, I don't want to tell people that like you can't have anything forever. Like I want you to enjoy your life, and I understand like holiday time, it's time that a lot of people tend to cheat, and like enjoy yourself. I think the social connection and community and like not beating yourself up around things is also important, because if you eat a cookie and then you give yourself like a whole stress and guilt trip about it, it's actually going to affect your biochemistry in a worse way than if you don't stress about it.
Totally.
Not that I'm advocating for eating cookies, but I'm just saying like,
Yeah, the state you're in when you do it is important.
Yes, it depends on what's going on in your life. And so if you've had a really stressed out week, or you have been spending time in an industrial area with a lot of chemicals and things, or you just got an injury, then like it might be a better time to focus on more nutrient dense foods, versus like, if you're pretty relaxed and you're not that stressed out and you're like pretty happy, then you're probably going to be able to tolerate the things that we don't always tolerate super well better. So it's kind of about learning how to read your body and read the system.
Totally. And there's that kind of emotional intelligence. Like for example, okay, we're talking mostly about food, but you have to connect food to sleep, because we make better food decisions when we're rested. For example, like anyone that's gone on a bender, and gotten very little sleep, hello college age, you know what I mean? It's like what are most college students eating? They're eating like pizza and sodas and, addictive kind of products. But it's like, I know that I make better decisions when I get a full night's sleep. I am able to control and curb my cravings. I'm able to kind of like take a breath when I'm feeling emotionally unstable around a certain food or anything like that. Or, when we do that emotional eating thing, like if I'm rested, I can just kind of be like, okay, you know what? I'm just feeling really intense. I'm experiencing like abandonment, or whatever. I'm experiencing sadness, whatever the things that make us gravitate towards that comfort food is. I'm able to just kind of take a breath, observe it, and then go drink some water, or like just not follow it, not let it make the decisions for me. And so it's really key. They all start to feed into each other. Yes. And I personally so here's just giving you some examples. I'd love to hear yours, but here's some things that I've learned for myself. Okay. So one is getting that full night's sleep. When I get a good night's sleep, I make better decisions. I find that I work out. Working out is really important to me. So exercise is key. I find that if I have a gym membership, I work out more, because then I'm paying for it, versus if it's something that I have to do at home, I'm human. I make every excuse to not do it. So, but if I'm paying for it, my frugal side comes out and be like, you can't waste that money. You got to go. So I go to the gym. I find that I work out best when I go there in the morning when I'm in a fasted state still, but I still like will have like some kind of like electrolytes or aminos or something. So I'm still drinking something. I get home and I immediately have some protein because I find that the amount of protein I eat in the morning directly relates to how hungry I am at night. So if I eat protein right away in the morning, then I'm not as hungry at night. And then I found that going to like eat, having my last meal end by like 5:36, so that I basically eat between 5 and 6. And I find that by having my last meal end so early, and then I go to bed at like 9, basically right around there, and I have that good 3 hours between my last meal and sleep, that I sleep better. Because if I eat too close to sleeping, I run hot, and then I'm sweating in the night and I wake up. So there's all these things that I've learned over the years, and they're little movements. I mean, I'm not saying anything that anyone listening can't do tomorrow. I'm not, I drink water all day. I don't drink any juices or sodas. I just drink water with electrolytes or just plain water. That's all I do. And those simple things. Oh, and then I make sure that I eat. I eat meals. I don't do tons of snacks. So I just make sure that I eat in a timely manner, because when I was younger, I used to push it. I used to like work, work, work. I was all about working, 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 and then I would go too long and I wouldn't eat, and then I would binge because I was so over hungry. So I just now eat more consistently, and all these little things make it so that I can maintain and thrive. It's that simple. But I'd love to hear what are those core principles that you're doing now that everyone can just do the minute they get off of this, watching this?
So I actually love everything you just said, and I'm just going to start with the sleep thing, right? And then we'll go from like going to sleep to waking up, and I'll kind of like go through the day and how different chemistry reacts to different foods and like why you crave different things. So the reason that taking time before you go to sleep to let yourself digest, preferably about 3 to 4 hours, is because when you go to sleep and you lie horizontal, there's something that your body does through your lymphatic system, but is basically cleansing your brain. And they call it the glymphatic system. And so when you sleep, if your blood is elsewhere, like in your digestive tract to digest food, it is not available to do that cleansing process of your brain. So if you are constantly like eating a bunch of sugar right before you go to bed, you're technically going to bed in a functional diabetic state, where you are then increasing your insulin levels and increasing your blood sugar levels, and you're not peeing because you're asleep. And so throughout the night, you have these really high levels of blood sugar and high levels of insulin. And then over time, if you do that every single day, that is how we develop like weird insulin resistance things. And it may not go all the way to a diagnosis, but it still makes your body not function as well, and it prevents your brain from cleaning itself. And if you do that for 50 years, that's 50 years that you haven't been cleaning your brain properly. And we kind of all know where that goes on the brain health track. So that's the sleep component. Then when we wake up in the morning, so doing exercise, like when you're in a bit of a fasted state, can be really great. I will say it also depends on like where you're at in your life. Like if you're in a state where you're really, really fatigued and you're like already struggling with chronic fatigue, or if you're a female and you're like at a time around your cycle, it might be better for you to like have a little bit of something, like maybe some bone broth, and then go work out, just so that your cells have like something to work with. But doing that in a fasted state, it's the same concept of like your blood is available to go and help with your exercise and help with oxygenation, because it's not distracted working on things in your gut. And then if you eat protein right after you work out, that is the best time for your body to integrate it. And protein basically, technically, ultimately breaks down into, sugars that your body can use for energy, but they're healthier sugars than like a processed sugar. And it is longer lasting than if you were to do it with a carbohydrate, which is why it tends to give you energy longer throughout the day, is because it's like a slower breakdown process. And then with carbohydrates, so if you've ever noticed, like if you fasted and then you worked out, and then like say you didn't get to eat and you went to work and you didn't get to eat until like the afternoon or even the evening sometimes, and then you're like super heavily craving like pasta or sugar or the sweets or something like that, it's because your body is in this kind of stressed out state where it's been using its gas reserves from your adrenals to help you run all day. And sometimes it's a day where you feel super productive, but then at 4 o'clock, you notice like your hand is shaking or you have the cold sweats. That's like if you're sweating and you're cold, it is a sign that your sympathetics are activated and your adrenals have been running too hard. And sometimes that's good if you're like in a competition or you're purposely pushing yourself that way. But if you're, it's just like your daily life, like you don't want to do that every day. And it also depends on the amount of stress that you're dealing with through the day. So let's say you're in college, right, or grad school, and like you are going through final exams. That may not be the best time to like be doing a whole bunch of fasting and a lot of coffee. Like it may be a time where you need to balance yourself a little bit more. But then in between, when you're not so stressed out, sure. So this is the cycling with your body and listening to it, and like why you might crave carbs at a certain time versus like if you eat protein, then you probably won't crave them. And so it's like you can do these things to prevent the weird cravings that people get. But if you've been doing these craving things and kind of this slightly unhealthy pattern for a really long time, then your body and your microbiome is going to be adapted to that. And it's going to be harder for you to break it. So just know that like if you're in the process of trying to make some changes, keep at it. Like it is the consistency that matters. I know it can be tough when you're like in the beginning of it, because it's almost like you're literally kind of have a food hangover, or you're like going through sugar withdrawals and it feels really crummy. But it's like, it's this balance that we kind of have to learn. And then our cells, like the way that they work. So, you know, keto is a big trend. And there are times I love keto. Like I think keto can be really, really great. In my opinion, when like I tend to work in the more like primal, evolutionary, ancestral model of health, where I'm like, well, to me, I think keto is supposed to cycle. Because like in our ancestral days, it's like we would go kind of without food for a little while, and then maybe we'd just be eating like stores of fats and nuts and seeds and things that we have. We'd go more into keto, and then we'd get a whole bunch of game, and you know, we'd have a good day where we could go out and forage, and then we'd go down, and then we go back up, and then we go down, and we'd like cycle through it at different times. And this is kind of how our cellular processes work. It's like they're kind of meant to cycle, so it's really hard for them to go like back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. The way our mitochondria work, so mitochondria are like the little battery powerhouses inside of your cells. They tend to like to use sugar because it's easy. And it's like, it's the easiest thing for them to break down. It's quick, fast energy. But what I'll tell patients is sugar is kind of like energy on a credit card. Like you pay for it later. There's interest on that.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yes. Whereas with fats, it's a little bit harder for them to do. So it's not like their first choice, but you get a lot more energy out of it. So it's actually more productive in the long run, but you have to train them on how to do this. And it's like, if you're never eating a diet where they get trained how to do that because you eat a lot of carbohydrates and a lot of sugar most of the time, then they're not going to be as good at it. And it's going to take you a little bit longer as you start to make these shifts to get the mitochondria on board of being like, oh, I need to use the carnitine transporter system to put fats into this realm so that the mitochondria can burn it for fuel. And that's like, so that's the process that I'll work with on people a lot. And like, I end up doing a lot of just cellular medicine and health in my work. And it's like, you'd be surprised how many people's mitochondria are a little bit dysfunctional. And one of the main things that makes them dysfunctional is environmental toxins. So that's where like the whole allostatic load thing comes back into play. So it's like we're working on a lot of different things, right? We have to like make sure that you're sleeping well so that your body can actually function correctly and your brain can send out the right signals. We have to, you know, oscillate our diet a bit while still giving our body a chance to adapt when we're trying to make changes so that it actually like learns how to use these new sources of fuel. And then we have to maintain that while also like being kind to our bodies and not putting toxins in and trying to be careful about, you know, how we purchase our stuff. And I'm a huge advocate of voting with your dollar. Like if we want to change society, the number one way that we can do it is by buying what you want to be present in society. If you keep buying all the stuff that's unhealthy, then that's just going to foster that market. If we start to buy the things that are healthier, it'll foster that market. And you guys have seen the changes in marketing in society where it's like they jump on the fad. So now that keto is a thing, like more keto things are coming out. Now that organic is a thing, more organic things are coming out. So it's just, you know, fostering what you want to see more of in the world. What's that Gandhi quote? Like, be the change you want to see in the world.
Yeah, and I'll add to that because I love that you just mentioned this. Don't think that just because it says keto or gluten-free or has that label that it's healthy, because I always point this out, like what's the first thing, any new trend, any new diet that comes out, what's the first category that really gets focused on? What would you guess? The category within the diet, like, so, well, I'll just say it's desserts. It's desserts.
Oh, well, yeah.
It's desserts.
The thing
like,
that strikes dopamine.
Yeah, exactly. So really, a lot of what the marketplace is continuing to support is really our addictive tendencies.
Yeah.
And so that's where it becomes untrustworthy. Just to say, oh, well, I'm going to eat that brownie because it says keto. It's like, no, no, no. It's still a brownie. It's
Yes.
still not something you need. You know what I mean? Let's not get locked into this dogmatic way of thinking and believing that just because it has the label of that thing that you're following in this moment, that means it is aligned with health. And that's why I'm always telling people, it's like we all have different definitions of health, and it's really important to ground yourself in what's your definition of
Yep.
health. Like what's working for you. And you said something that this is going to sound absurd. I just turned 49, and I literally just learned about a month ago something you just said, which is, oh, it all comes down to consistency. Like that one practice is truly what moves the health needle. If you are consistent with whatever you're choosing to do in that moment, it could be like, hey, the most I can do right now is go for walks, 30-minute walks a day. Well, as long as you're consistent with that, you will see the needle move. The most I can do right now is I'm going to stop drinking sodas and I'm going to focus on drinking water. But that's really all I can do right now.
That
Great.
alone is huge.
Huge, right? So now just be consistent with that. We don't have to make these humongous movements, and we also don't have to do multiple movements all at the same time. You could literally just pick one thing, but just be consistent with it. And I say that I only just learned this because I used to think that exercise was about these spurts of exercise, that I was going to see like these major health changes if I just do 8 weeks. Like all the books, they said just 12 weeks of this workout and you'll have muscles like Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's like, no, you won't.
You can do it for 8 weeks, every couple months for a few years. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But the key is like it has to be for a few years. Like you have to do things consistently, and then you'll really start to see changes. Some people are unicorns. Like we can't think that just because one person had movement around something in a very short amount of time that we're all going to see that. We just don't. So consistency. So I love that you said that.
Yeah. Well, and I just saw, I think this actually ties in nicely. I just saw a question came in that says like, well, what if you have ADHD? So I'm going to go with the term neurodivergent. I think that's the term now, right? Like if you have a neurodivergent brain. So my opinion on that is that I think we all have neurodivergent brains. And I think our brains get out of balance. We definitely have genetic tendencies towards certain balances of neurotransmitters, but I think a lot of it has to do with food. And I saw a question earlier about like uh, MSG was formulated to mimic umami in the brain, which I find really interesting. So if you're eating a lot of MSG, which is the additive in like a lot of different, eating out food sources, especially
Package foods too.
yeah, like
It's
tons of
it's hit
packaged foods.
it's hidden a lot. A lot of times it's even hidden in the flavoring. Like if you see natural or artificial flavors, it's hidden in that.
Yep. And so that actually stimulates glutamate in the brain. And glutamate is an excitatory neurotransmitter. And if you have too much of it, it can actually damage your neurons. So then all of a sudden we have this like huge rise of all these neurodivergent conditions, and we like pretend to not know why. But to me, it's because the neurology and the gut is imbalanced. And your brain and your gut are not separate. Like they are so interconnected, and your gut actually has as many neurons as a cat's brain. And there's actually more signals going from your gut to your brain than from your brain to your gut. So your gut is actually like this external regulator, much like your skin, that sends all of these signals back to your brain about the outside environment. And it's where your immune cells go to get trained. And it has the highest concentration of immune cells in your body because they're always dealing with outside external sources. So if your gut is a little bit messed up from eating, all these foods that have toxins like pesticides that break down your gut lining and then let foods leak through, and then your immune system gets upregulated, and then it gets more upregulated because you had a stressful event or those pesticides actually caused some leaky gut. And then it like continually gets upregulated, and then you have these inflammatory things going on, and then your brain gets a little bit inflamed. Then all of a sudden it's like you have a really hard time focusing, or you're feeling a little depressed, or you're really struggling with anxiety. And there's a lot of research out that's now showing that depression is actually like inflammation of the brain. And so if you
Interesting.
can get the inflammation down, your mood will substantially improve because your neurotransmitter production improves. And a ton of your neurotransmitters are produced from your gut. And so that is why, like, if your gut is off balance, your neurotransmitters are going to be off balance, and therefore your brain will be off balance. And then you get labeled with some kind of condition when really you're just a normal human, but you're a little bit out of balance. So that's kind of my take on those things. And, you know, when it comes to diagnoses, like, they have their role and they have their place, but to me, it's vocabulary to quickly describe what's going on physiologically in your body. So to me, it all just comes back to physiology. So the question that I work with when I'm working with clients is like, cool, how do I get your physiology balanced? And I will know if it's balanced because you feel better.
Yeah. I'm
So
I'm a huge advocate as well, for not just looking at diagnosis from someone that is focusing on one modality. Like most doctors, for example, they don't know nutrition.
yeah,
You know what I mean? So I would prefer to go someone that's a little bit more holistic. So maybe they are still looking at it from that Western lens, but they're also looking at it from a nutritional standpoint of what is the thing that we're putting in our bodies. Because the truth is, what do we do the most out of everything is that we eat. So
yes, every day. That's
you
why I
have
always start with food.
you have to, right? So you should, if you're looking at anything behavioral, anything chemical in your body, I personally vote for that person that also has an understanding of nutrition because it's key. I mean, I can't even tell you how many people I know, kids even, who
I'm so
have
glad you mentioned kids. That's the next thing I was going to say. It's so important for kids.
kids, right, who have been diagnosed with ADHD from someone who didn't even look at their nutrition. And I know these kids and I know their nutrition, and I'm like, this kid's off balance with their food. And I guarantee that is what's supporting the off balance in their brain. I guarantee it because I watch what these kids eat. I watch how they live. I watch how they carry themselves. And it's like, I just wish that they had someone in their life that would have been look at it from a nutritional perspective as well. Because I
Yep.
know in my heart, I know that those kids, at least, and I can't speak, of course, for everyone, but I know that those kids probably wouldn't need that medication if someone was looking at their food.
Yep, because I mean, Hippocrates said it a long, long time ago. Food is medicine. So it's
Yeah.
like, why can't we just use food to balance your neurotransmitters? Like, what a concept. And so this is a lot of what I do in my office. And I work with a ton of kids. I actually do like perinatal pediatric stuff. And oh, that was the other thing I wanted to mention earlier. Perinatal. This is a great time to use things like organ meat and organ meat
Yes.
seasoning because it is a nutrient demanding time, both prenatal and postnatal. Just going to toss that out there.
Yeah.
So then coming back to the, yep, and then coming back to the kids thing, like, it is more important for them than anybody because they're developing. Like, their
Developing. Yeah.
brains are being built from the building blocks that are going in their body. So if they don't have the right building blocks, their brain is not going to be built as effectively and efficiently as it could be built. And then even in our teens and stuff like that, it's like, you know, that's probably one of the highest times that pharmaceuticals start to be used is like teenage years, especially for women. And it's just, you know, it's a time to really focus on balancing yourself nutritionally. So like if you are considering, and you know, and I'm not saying anything against the conventional realm in medicine, like it saves lives and it
Absolutely.
totally has helped tons of people. But I am a huge fan of working in conjunction with lifestyle medicine. So it's like I'd much rather do lifestyle medicine first and see if we can kind of start to shift some things. And then if you still need it, then that's when it's life-saving and it can be great. But, you know, so, or, you know, some people make choices to use certain things to, you know, like I'm just going to throw it out there, like birth control, right? That has advanced women in a number of ways, but it's not super easy on your body nor your gut. So if that is something that you're doing, it's even more important for you to be nutritionally aware and be taking care of your body to prevent things like leaky gut and then prevent things like anxiety or depression or the things that tend to be tied to it. So, you know, but for kids, when their brain is developing, like, why would we not try to make sure that their brain is developing in a balanced way before we put in more exogenous sources that changes their neurochemistry? So that's why I think nutrition is just super important for kids.
Well, and you know that's actually I love that you shouted out around organ meats around for that, and that's one of the powers of pluck is because what as a parent, what are we struggling with? We're struggling to get some of these really clean, healthy foods into our kids because maybe they're too far over in that kind of sweet realm where their body is kind of like almost like um, needing and kind of like hungering for sugar, right? Because that's mostly where they're operating from now. That's mostly what their body is craving and burning. But holy moly, like just start sprinkling pluck on their food. There's no hurdle. Like there's nothing about that process that the kid's going to say, I don't want to eat that. Whereas if you serve them liver and onions, they'll look at it and be like, I'm not eating that. And then you feel like you just wasted your time and money. When you sprinkle something on as a seasoning, no one says anything. And if anything, we haven't met a kid yet that doesn't like it. So it's like,
When I love how you talked about earlier, it actually like expands their palate, and
yeah,
like there's different craving things. So, you know, a lot of people don't realize like when you're craving sugars, you're also probably like low in zinc. And there's a whole mineral component that goes along with cravings. And there's tons of minerals in organ meat. So
yeah.
you might actually mitigate some of those cravings by just giving the right nutrition.
Totally. And I'm a big moderate kind of guy. Like I really am not a huge, and I'm not big in the extremes. And that's kind of why I like this seasoning, because it's not, there's no capsule fatigue. You know, you're not having to take tons of capsules. And one thing that I love too about actually the tangibility of like the spice which has the origami in it is touching your tongue and not bypassing the whole your
Yeah,
flavors.
it creates a whole different gastric response.
Exactly. And you have a physical response of like I always compare it to, like, let's just say you're in need of salt, sodium, right? If you put your finger in some really quality sea salt and you put it on your tongue, you have an immediate physical response of like, give me more, or it's like, nope, I don't need any more, right?
Your body
Your
knows.
body knows, right? But yet if you're taking a capsule, you completely bypass that process. So I find when kids and parents and people in general use pluck, you're not bypassing. So the minute it hits your tongue, you're hit with this wave of umami, which triggers the part in your brain of like, I want more, I want more. You're hit with, does your body need these nutrients? Probably yes. And then you have this immediate response of like, oh, that's so good. Just like you do when you have bone broth, right? When you drink bone broth, it's not a like, oh, that was good. It's like, oh, that was good. It's a grounding, like, yes, right? It's a very primal kind of like, thank you. And that's how organ meats, that's how the body responds when you get organ meats. So yes, power to the organ meats, power to your intuitive, letting your body process it naturally. And I know we probably have to get off soon because this is going to end, I
No, I
think.
was gonna say I could talk to you for hours, but I know you're a busy guy, and thank you so much for even taking the time to do this. This has been an awesome conversation. We'll have to do
So
another
fun.
one in the future. But any last things that you want people to know, or if they want to learn more about you and Pluck, where can they go?
Yeah, well, so you can find us at eatpluck.com, and we have multiple flavors of seasoning. One of them is actually just the pure organ meat, so there's no salt, no spices, and I highly recommend that for people that want the maximum nutrition, but also who are like, hey, I can't do certain spices. So like this is it's an AIP, it's got nothing in it but the organ meats, and it's very versatile. So you can add it to like a smoothie, you can add it to a sauce,
Oh,
you can add
awesome.
it to ground meat and mix it in. It's just incredibly versatile. So highly recommend checking it out, seeing how your body responds to them. You can find us on Instagram at Eat Pluck. I'm personally Chef James Berry. You can find me as well. And I would just want to leave with like, this is probably, I think hopefully you've gotten lots of value out of this talk, because that's really what I know Christine and I both want to provide, is like, we want you to leave here taking action, right? Because if we just talk about it, it doesn't mean anything. We got to take action. We got to decide and do, as Michael Burnoff would say. And I would also offer this one last piece of action, which really does help to get people cooking in their kitchens more. It helps you to really keep focused when you're in the grocery store, which is to meal plan. Literally,
Yeah.
it's that simple. Just meal plan. You can grab a magazine, your favorite cookbook, pick your meals for that week. Just focus on dinners, because dinners could be leftover lunches, and breakfasts you can keep breakfast really simple, but just focus on dinners, and then create that grocery list that you're going to the grocery store with, and stick to that list. Don't make emotional purchases. And right away,
And don't go when you're hungry.
yes, and don't go when you're hungry. But right away, you'll start to see shifts, because you can really curate your meal plan based on your week. So let's just say you have a day where you're like, oh, I'm in meetings all day. I do not have time to cook. Guess what? that's a pressure cooker or a slow cooker day. Throw it all in the morning, right in the pressure cooker or slow cooker.
Yeah. Oh, I love slow
Seal it
cooking.
up, put on the timer, and then when you're done at 5 or whatever time you end your day, it's ready for you. Just toss in some dark leafy greens or anything like that, and let the residual heat from the slow cooker or the pressure cooker just steam those, and then your meal's already ready.
That
Done.
was awesome. I love that. Maybe we'll have to do another one on like meal planning. If you guys
Oh yeah.
wanna, if you guys would want something like that, which I think that's actually a really good idea, comment below on this video and like let us know, and we'll come up with a fun one for the next time. But thank you so much, James. This
Thank
was
you.
really, really fun. And also, I'm just gonna throw it out there. If you guys need stocking stuffers or Christmas gifts, Pluck would be a really cool Christmas gift. So just a thought for you. And then, if you guys are struggling with making changes and trying to get new habits into your life, that is exactly what I do, the group programs and stuff that I do for. So if you need help, or want a support community, or you just want to do it yourself, but you like want some videos, go to the link in my bio and that'll take you to the page with all that information. So anyway, thank you. Go for it.
One little last thing, because I want to plug you about something, is when we work with practitioners, you want to make sure that the practitioner also looks good and like also is kind of like fits how they're sharing, the content that they're sharing, that they're living it. And I have to say, for anyone that hasn't met Christine in person, she looks fabulous. She takes care of herself. Like you really walk your talk. And I think it's easy to take that for granted. So kudos to you, and anyone that's following Christine. Just know we know each other. I've met her in person, and she truly is not only just an awesome human being, but someone who walks her talk. So she's a great person to work with.
Thank you. That means a lot. And it's been, I've been on my own journey, which is why I have so much compassion to people going through this, and why I have so many tricks. It's because I had to do it too.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you. And I just saw someone already ordered Pluck. Good job.
Yay,
And
thank
so
you.
if you have questions about changing your order, just send a message to Eat Pluck through Instagram or
Yeah,
something like that. And I'm sure he can help you out.
yeah, or hello@eatpluck.com too. Yep.
Perfect.
Take
All
care.
right. Have a good day.
Bye.